Chapter, and welcome to Beachcities Online. My name is Brittany, and I'm one of the staff members here, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us online today. Beachcities Community Church is located in Huntington Beach, California, and our mission is to help people find Christ and grow spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. And we do this by strengthening our faith, our families, and our God-entrusted freedoms. If you're ever in the Orange County area, we want to invite you to join us in person here at our campus on 9872 Hamilton Avenue in Huntington Beach, California. We have services on Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. and Sundays at 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. Well, this weekend, our senior and founding pastor, Kent Sparks, is doing a special Q&A service where our guests here on campus ask him questions about life, faith, the Bible, pretty much anything. These services are always rich with wisdom and a lot of fun. So let's get to it.
Thank you, Casey. Well, good evening, guys. How are we? Are you guys fired up? All right, I'm fired up today, too. We have a couple of things I want to bring to your attention as we get started. First off, if you have questions, text them in. I'll try to answer them as best I can. I only know a few things. I don't know everything, that's for sure. And if I don't know, I won't fake it. I'll just say I don't know. And if it's important, I'll go study up on it and get you some answers on that. Does that sound good? All right. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. Where do you text? Can anyone tell me where we text? Hello? Or that number up there. 695-5411. 695-5411. That's your number. Any text, just text that in and they get it. And then all the cuss words are extracted and they just put up the, clean version for us to see. That's why we have to do the filter mechanism. Anyways, the couple of announcements. Number one, we had a generous family come up. They want to remain anonymous, so they will. It's easy because I forgot their name, so I can't even remember. And they'll match up to $200,000 if we can get $200,000. And that actually we met the goal and we're over the top. So I don't know what the final numbers are, but it'll probably be close to $500,000 a month, which will really help us because, it's been raining. And in our building, it rains inside and outside. We need some roofing done, so that's going to help a lot. And some of the other things for homeschooling and our 7 engines and all the different stuff that we're doing, we're going to be able to allocate for these ministries. It's going to be really, really wonderful. Very excited. God is blessing us. So thank God for this family, and also thank God for the generosity and the generous hearts of the people of God. I am just super grateful to be a pastor of such a wonderful, encouraging, generous, loving congregation and to work with an incredible staff. I have Biden's disease pretty much. And so anything that gets done around here gets done because of their capable abilities, not mine. I am just kind of up here, and there's a ventriloquist that kind of runs me. And the rest of the staff runs this ship, and that's why it runs so smoothly. So I want to thank them as well. We have a terrific staff. I love those guys. They really do great work. The next announcement that I'm supposed to make is, ever heard of blockchain technology? I've been studying a lot about that and things like that. One of those things that is associated with blockchain technology is not the only thing. It's called cryptocurrency. I'm sure you've heard of that. Well, we can take donations in cryptocurrency now. We had just a great family in our church that I guess the guy's an expert in it, and he set up an account and actually loaded the account a little bit with some money, a substantial amount of money, thank God. And but if you want to make a donation, you can go to the website, and the address is there, and you can make your donation, get your receipt, all that kind of stuff. And we can take cryptocurrency donations as well. But blockchain's bigger, and we're going to talk about that in relationship to the Antichrist. When we finally get there, I do want to get back to the 10 Commandments as soon as I can. But that's chapter 4 of 1 John, so you have to wait for the rest of the blockchain technology lecture and all that later. What's the next thing I'm supposed to mention? Was there something else I was supposed to mention? Oh, yeah, right here. Here it is. See, these are the things that help me. I didn't have my note card to pull out of my pocket. Turning Point, TPUSA Faith Chapter launch. We're going to launch one of the Orange County chapters right here at this church. Isn't that awesome? It's going to be the weekend of the 29th and 30th. I'm going to be speaking a shorter version of a sermon as to the Christian view of political engagement with culture. And then we're going to have Hannah, who is the representative area, Western States Director, Regional Director of TPUSA, who will also be speaking. Then they'll have a table outside and more information. And this fits into our 7 engines of influence, how we can be involved by partnership with them in a faith community. In fact, if you want, she told me that on the next weekend, from noon to 5, all of the different chapters from around the state of California are meeting in a big rally in San Diego at the Shorefront Park. That's where they have the boats and all of that there, and near the Old Town area. And you can meet all those people. They'll have the speakers that speak for TPUSA, like Charlie Kirk and the other guys that are on their team. Will be able to meet the different people from PTUSA, and it's just a way to for churches to cross-pollinate with the different churches that are on the team with TPUSA. But remember, this is part of our 7 engines of influence. These are the areas that when we involve ourselves, we will be taking back the influence that the social Marxists have taken in order to accomplish their atheistic anti-God agenda, and it's destroying our country. And so by intelligently retaking that territory for the glory of God and returning it to a Judeo-Christian value system based on the 10 commandments and the great commandment to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, your neighbor as yourself, we will be able to transform our culture because we're in a 4th turning. And a 4th turning is when a generation turns leadership over to another generation, and it has cataclysmic effects for the next 100 years. We're in that decade where it's happening. This is a fight for the soul of the country, and we can take it back if we will dedicate ourselves to obeying Christ, being an influence for the gospel, not being a shying away from political engagement, because political engagement isn't about partisan politics. It's about values and religious issues. That's what it's about. The liars will tell you it's about a political agenda. It is not. I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I am an independent, because there's some good Republicans and there's some good Democrats. And I want to have the freedom to support the ones who line up with God and His Word. That's what we're about. And that's what we're trying to institute, because we're supposed to be salt and light till Jesus gets back. And so our job is to influence the culture for the glory of God until Jesus returns. Not just go, oh, it's all losing. We're on the Titanic. We're going down. So let's have our last party and then go down with the ship. No. That is a false theological narrative that for too long the evangelical Christian church in America has bought, and that's why we're in the mess we're in. We've abandoned our forefathers, who are pretty much all Calvinists. Remember what Calvin did? He transformed the city of Geneva, and to this day it's still one of the greatest cities in the world, because he decided to build it on Christian principles. You can read all about it in Calvin's Institutes, which I've been reading because I'm seeing how can we institute these sorts of things in American culture today. Recapturing the biblical worldview, instilling it into culture without becoming a mono-religious system. Because we want to have freedom of religion. We want to be free for Muslims to practice their faith, even though we disagree, and will vehemently debate them on the value of the different faiths, but they should have the right to do it if that's what they choose. God lets them do it. Why would I stop them? Just don't chop off my head. Got to be civilized about this stuff. And that's what we're saying. So those are the announcements. I hope you'll join us for that weekend. It'll be a great weekend. Next week, we start kick off the New Year series on how to create healthy habits that will transform your life. You don't want to miss the first one. There's some cool pictures of me in the first one. I think you'll weighing 327 pounds. And how that implementing these biblical principles actually changed my life. All right? I think it's in that first one. All right? Are we good to go? All right. Thank you. Let's have a word of prayer, and then, I've already preached. We can go home after that one. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you. We thank you that you loved us so much you sent your Son to save us from our sin and make us right with you. If we'll just entrust ourselves to His care. And we have, Lord, and we want to reaffirm that now, and we want to say thank you. And I want to ask that your Holy Spirit would enlighten my mind, give me wisdom and understanding and insight into your word and into your truth as I share thoughts that come to mind in response to the questions that are asked, so that, Lord, whatever it is that I share would be in harmony with your truth, and if not, that all of us would kind of forget it and would leave here not affected negatively. What is true and accurate, Lord, May it lead each of us into a deeper appreciation for you and for what you've done for us. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, here we go. Number 1, what practical steps can I take to find joy as prescribed from God in times of stress, pain, or anxiety? So now we have 3 questions in one. This is a compound question. The first main question is, how do I get joy? The second question is, how do I maintain joy in the midst of an anxious, stressful, or painful situation? And the third is, how do I distinguish joy from just happiness? In other words, how do I know this is from God instead of something manufactured by me? So those are the three questions really in this one. So let me begin by addressing the core issue. Where does joy come from? Joy can never be obtained by pursuing joy. That's absolutely impossible to do. And the more you try to pursue joy, the more you will be frustrated in the outcomes that you're getting. Now, catch this line. This line is worth the price of admission today. You ready? Joy is the byproduct of doing what is right. Joy is the byproduct of doing what is right. Now, joy is a deep-seated sense of gratification and satisfaction that comes from knowing that you're in alignment with the will of God. That I am doing right now, even though it's painful, even though it's stressful, even though it's difficult, because I'm turning the other cheek and I'm getting hit really hard. But I feel good. I feel joy in my heart because I did it for the right reason. This is why they sing in prison in the Bible when they're imprisoned. And that in those days, the prisons didn't operate like they do in America today. They didn't feed you, so if your friends didn't come by and drop off some food, you didn't eat. And if you got lippy, they just punched you in the face. They didn't really have any kind of strict regulations on how to treat criminals. So it was a brutal place. They didn't have nice bathroom facilities. You have to make your way in these dungeons. Disease killed more prisoners than actually the imprisonment or the penalty for the crime. But these guys are singing in prison because why? They have joy. What's the joy from? From doing what was right. And paying the price for it brings joy. It solidifies it. So joy is always the byproduct of doing what is right. So when people have asked me in the past, well, how do I pursue joy? You pursue it by, and here's another freebie, by studying the Beatitudes. Because the Beatitudes say, oh, how happy, oh, how joyful, oh, how blessed is the one who. And it tells you the right thing to do to start that process. Blessed are the poor in spirit. What does that mean? That's the first one of the steps to joy. There are 10 steps to joy. That's the foundational step. They all work themselves out further. And to be poor in heart means to understand that in and of yourself, you have inside your heart a pit of snakes that hiss with wickedness all the time. That at the core of your being, you are spiritually bankrupt and have nothing to offer God or anybody else, that you are desperately wicked and evil, and because of that, you cry out to God for mercy. And that's the first step of joy. And then you receive the mercy, and your heart goes, oh, joy. I'm blessed. I feel the blessing of God, the grace of God, the joy is filling my heart. And you just go through those Beatitudes. In each one of those, he says this is another key to building a life of joy, and focus on those Beatitudes. So that's the quick deal. So that's the main idea. The second idea is in the midst of anxiety. Anxiety is irrelevant because as long as you're trying to solve the anxiety, all you do is intensify it because it's forcing you to focus on the thing that's the negative thing that's bothering you. You ever notice that? The more you think about your nose is itching, the more it seems to itch. But if you can be distracted, then it doesn't bother you so much. And you get distracted by pursuing the things that are right, that are in those Beatitudes. And you don't worry about that. The third thing, and this is how to overcome the anxiety itself, is we're told in Philippians to take the anxiety, make a list of all the things that are causing you this anxiety, and then turn it over to God one at a time in prayer. And that God will take away the anxiety because you're offloading it to him, and he will fill your heart with peace that passes all human understanding or comprehension. And in other words, in a supernatural way, that you'll have a sense of peace. And with peace comes joy. There's love, joy, peace. They all run together, and they're all connected. It begins with love, which produces joy, which produces peace. And you look at the fruits of the Spirit, they're connected that way. And so what you'll end up having is a transformation of your inner life. And you'll then be able to live joy-filled. And you'll laugh occasionally, but that's not joy, that's happiness. But you'll at least be in a mindset that where you can see funny things as funny as opposed to tragic, because there's very little difference between the two, if you noticed, right? All right, I think that's got the first one. I think we've got it covered. All right, next one. Where does the non-believer spirit go after death? What is hell actually like? How would you answer someone who says, I'd rather be in hell with my friends than in heaven without them? I'm going to start with the last one because that's the most practical. Then I would say to this, well, you understand Jesus said that you are cast into hell, into the place of outer darkness. Means there's no what? There's no awareness of anyone around you. It's outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. So A, you're going to be isolated. B, it's not going to be fun. C, it's going to be a lot of misery and isolation. Darkness, nowhere, you don't even know where you are. It's also referred to as the bottomless pit. Could be the same place. There's some theological questions about that. In a bottomless pit, what do? You fall endlessly in a dark area without anything to hold you up, and you don't ever feel the bottom come. So when we talk about hell, we're talking about a very, 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 very tragic and serious issue. And those who take it flippantly, I'll be in hell partying with me. No, you won't. No, you won't. All you'll hear is moaning and misery. That's all you're going to hear. All right? So where does the non-spirit's believer spirit? And the Old Testament term is Sheol. You go to the realm of the dead. In the New Testament, you go to a place that is known as Hades. And we talked about Jesus delivering things, and there's a God who oversees Hades. The spiritual entity is probably a better way to say it, that keeps them locked in. And it's the holding prison of the unredeemed lost until they reach the final judgment. Then at the final judgment, they are either cast into the lake of fire, which is what most people don't know, but that's what they mean by hell. Or, then their works are evaluated, and then they're cast into the lake of fire, which most people don't understand, but that actually is hell. So it's a holding tank before you go to hell until you meet the judgment. And the judgment happens when Jesus comes back, establishes a kingdom on earth, and then he judges the living and the dead at that moment. Believers and unbelievers as well. There's actually 4 different judgments in the New Testament. I don't want to get into all those, but that's the sequence of events for the unbeliever. All right, did that answer the question? So that's where it goes. It goes to the place of the unredeemed dead, normally called Hades. Hades is understood both at the time the New Testament was being written in Greek mythology, and it was part of the culture. It was also, it's true biblically, because that's the term that's used. The Holy Spirit causes the writers of the New Testament to choose that word, knowing that the culture would understand it that way, that this is the place where the evil dead go, and they're imprisoned until the day of a judgment comes. And so that's the picture that God gives us in the New Testament. We can't get more detailed on that because we don't know how much of that is. It's actually true and literally true, but there's also using metaphors to describe it. There's fire, apparently, but is there really real fire? How does the spirit experience fire? So the question is, I don't think spirits experience fire, so it's something that's compatible to fire, but you're in a spirit realm. So to get into all those details becomes sort of endless pursuit of non-definable questions. The ultimate point is, it goes to a prison where spirits are imprisoned until the day of judgment, and in that imprisonment period, there is not punishment, but it's not pleasurable. It's very, very painful. And then the final judgment. All right? That's the best I think we can do on that. Next one. How do we give hope to those going through heartbreak, loss, death, especially during this unique period of time? This is a huge question because part of the problem that people experience, this frustration and their discouragement, depression, anxiety, all that's happening in the world today is rooted in one problem, one issue alone. And it could be demonstrated this way. About 2 weeks ago, a guy was coming out of See's Candy, and he didn't have a mask on. And a lady saw that, and she lost it. And she's just filled with fear, like she's going to die. And the guy says to her, "Why are you so afraid? Are you afraid to die?" She didn't know what to do. She did not know what to do with that. And that's the issue. The Bible says that Satan holds all of unredeemed humanity in bondage to fear. so that they are enslaved to him all of their lives. The reason that people are so anxious, so worried, is they're afraid to die. Are you afraid to die? I'm not afraid to die. I just don't want it to be gruesome, take a long period of time of suffering to go with it. Just knock it off, get it done, and I'll be in heaven. But if you're terrified because you have no idea what's next, and your conscience is telling you you will not stand before a righteous God, you have good reason to be terrified. You have good reason to be terrified. And so the answer to this question is, you say the important thing to understand is to have your life squared away with God. When I was in the days that I was racing bikes, I was at one of the races in Long Beach, and I was on the sidelines that week for whatever. I didn't get my application in time, but I wanted to support the team. So I'm standing there talking there, and this guy comes up to me, and he looks kind of scared. And I've known him because he's been on my team. And I say, hey, how come you're not racing? And he goes, I got a heart issue. I said, what do you mean you got a heart issue? I got this 8 feet thing. It could kill me. It could kill me. He's having a heart attack in front of me telling me about this. He's so scared. And I just looked at him. I said, is your life squared away with God? And I don't know. I go, well, that's a good reason to be scared. Because what you have could kill you. It's not very often that it does, but it could. It's more likely to leave you with a stroke and you be in a wheelchair the rest of your life. And he's thinking, you're not help. What kind of help is this? I said, but I can help you with that. And so over a process of time, I ended up going to his house, sharing a Billy Graham track with him, Steps to Peace with God. He prayed it right there with me. His wife is crying. She was a Christian, was afraid to ask him to go to church because he had always been railing on God and been a hardcore atheist. And now he's part of the family, and there are 2 guys going to heaven. And I get a text from this guy every couple of months just saying, thank you, I'm going to heaven because of you. Thank you. Just out of the blue. Just out of the blue. He's truly grateful. Hopefully I'm going to be able to see him this week. He moved out of town. I'm looking forward to getting together with him. But anyways, the point is, you ask him that question. Is your life squared away with God? Because if it's not, there's no way to get rid of the fear, the anxiety, and the terror you're facing. You have good reason to be. I empathize with you. I couldn't sleep if I was in your shoes. I wouldn't sleep. I would do whatever I had to do to get this figured out. Because that's the real issue. That's the real issue. I hope that's helpful. Do we give hope to those going through heartbreak, loss, death during this time? That's how. Square away with God. You entrust your soul to the care and control of Jesus Christ, understanding that he is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, and all-wise. And that he loves you more than you love yourself. He's concerned about your good more than you are concerned about your good yourself. And he knows all the answers you have none of the answers to. And if you trust him to run the show and just go along with him, piggyback on his back, he'll take care of you. And you'll be fine. And that's what this is about, is learning how to trust him. That's why Jesus said, come unto me, all you labor and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest for your soul. For my burden is easy, my load is light. He just said, just come to him and let him carry the burden with you, right? That's literally what he says in that Matthew passage. Allow Jesus to carry the burden of anxiety and worry and fear and the well-being of your life in every area. Now, that's the answer. How do you get there? Well, when you're in panic mode, it's really hard to get there. You have to stop. And I speak from personal experience. You have to stop. Say, everything needs to slow down here. Let me get my bearings right. Here's how I get my bearings right. God is in charge. He is in control and knows everything. I can trust an all-knowing, all-loving, wise God who loves me enough to send his son to die for me. I can trust him with my life. And then I stop and I say, Lord, I give this to you. Just show me your will and I'll follow it, whatever it is. And I find peace and comfort in that. And so that's what I do personally. I hope that's helpful. What's the next one? Does the Bible say anything about cremation? It doesn't. Is it permissible for Christians? Yes, it is. Do pets go to heaven? I hope so. Those are all things the Bible doesn't address. So those are my answers, okay? We can debate all the theological. The only thing I'd say about cremation, if you're doing it as a religious act in defiance of God, then I would say it's not lawful for you to do. Then you're doing a false religious ritual. And there are beliefs, mostly Hindus, do that. And so Hindu cremation would not be appropriate. But if you're cremated, it doesn't matter. Some people are cremated by accident. Their house burned down while they were sleeping. Same thing. So, no, it doesn't really discuss it, as long as it's not a conscious act of some sort of statement to God that you're upset with him or something like that. It's fine. Okay? Next one. How can I answer my non-Christian friends' questions about creation in regard to dinosaurs, the Ice Age, etc.? Any recommendation? Yes, you can't, because you probably are not, we're not there, that's for sure. And nor was any of the scientists that claim to have the answers. They also weren't there. So everybody is guessing about what to do. So here's what I would suggest you do. Go to Creation Research Institute online and read all their stuff and see all their videos, and they'll give you the Christian worldview on all of that. There are two sides to every story, and you want to get both sides. That's the best way to do it. I can't get into all those details today, and it won't help you to do it anyways. You wouldn't remember it. But my point is, there's the evidence out there. Go to Creation Research, or there's another one too. Ken Ham is the director, and they also built the, pardon? Anyways, they also built, which I really want our junior hires to go to if I can work it out. They built that great big Noah's Ark. I think it's in Tennessee. That's what? It's in Kentucky, yeah, in Kentucky. Anyways, that ministry has done tons of research and have some of the world's best archaeologists and geologists on their staff who are Christians who address these issues. So check out those two. Ken Ham, he's the head of this organization. You'll want to just put his name in a Google search and it'll tell the organization. Do that, or do Christian Research Institute. Both of those will help you, and there's many others, but those are the ones top of my head right now. Next one here. I'm seeking God. What books or podcasts do you recommend aside from the Bible? I don't know what seeking God means. You want to become a Christian? Then go to the Billy Graham Crusade headquarters and listen to all the Billy Graham sermons. They're only about 19 minutes. He never goes over. I kind of started timing them to see what he did. So I thought, I'll never be Billy Graham. But he's got a bunch of good evangelistic sermons on there. If it means to grow in my faith, here's what I would suggest you do, depending how serious you are. I'm assuming you're reasonably serious. Go to the Dallas Seminary website. You can take in complete seminary classes for free on any subject that you want, pretty much, and get basically a seminary level education on those areas of information. Those are the two places that I would start. And there's a million others, but I'd start there. All right? Next one. My daughter is in high school and has friends who are getting into witchcraft. Any advice on how she could talk to them about it? Yes, tell her to get a large cross, hold it in front of her while she speaks to them. I'm kidding about that. Crucifix. I'm going to address the parent, not the daughter. You have to assess if your child is strong enough in the faith to come into face-to-face conflict with demonic wickedness and power. That's not something you play around with. They all think it's kicks and giggles. You are opening the door to supernatural wickedness and power on a magnitude and a level you have no idea what you're dealing with. And unless you are really squared away in your relationship with God and know exactly what you're doing, you do not involve your stuff with that. The Bible is very clear, have nothing to do with witches. In fact, in Saul's day, you're supposed to stone him. Not today, but that gives you the idea of how serious God takes that. This is magnitudes of wickedness and power. You have no clue what you're playing with. It's like, should my daughter play with this rattlesnake she found? That's what you're asking. And the answer is no. No. You don't play with the rattlesnake. That's a big problem. Okay. Next question. Does the gift of healing exist today? There's so many different views on this. The view I take is that God is sovereign and all-powerful and can heal anybody anytime. And he does an answer to prayer all the time. And I can give many examples throughout my ministry or my years in ministry of people that have been prayed for and have been supernaturally healed. And in fact, I happen to be of the opinion that all healing is a byproduct of God's grace, and that it's rooted to some degree in the atonement, and ultimately will be rooted in the atonement on our final healing, which happens in heaven. We'll all die from heart failure. When our heart stops beating, we did. That's a disease. That doesn't matter what the name of it is. So not everything is healed. And it's not always God's will that someone be healed. Paul knew that it wasn't God's will for him to be healed. He prayed 3 times. God says, it's not my will for you to be healed. It's my will for you to have this illness, and I'm not going to remove it. So it's possible for God to do supernatural, miraculous healing, and he does. And it's possible for him to withhold it, and he does. We don't know. Our goal is not to be healed. Our goal is to have God's will be done in our life. And we can say, I would like a healing. Please put that to the top of the list of potential outcomes. And I pray that all the time for myself. No, I don't want to be miserable and sick either. But I also understand it may not be God's will. Yes. Now, the question of the gift of healing is very complex, because what do you mean by the gift of healing? You mean I can supernaturally do it at my will? Like the gift of preaching? I preach when I feel like preaching. I can even schedule it week in and week out. Know that God will empower me to do it on those days and at those times if I'm walking in fellowship with him? Are we talking about that kind of gift? And if we are, then why aren't you at the hospital over here at Chalk, going from room to room, healing people, send them home, put them out of business? Doesn't seem that kind of healing really exists, because I've never seen that happen. So if we're defining it that way, no, and I don't think that's a legitimate definition of the gift. I think the gift of healing, according to the Bible, is one of those miraculous gifts, and they're all miraculous, but it's one of those unique miraculous gifts that authenticate the message and messenger of God. So that when you're going to bring the gospel to somebody who's never heard before, and you pray that God will show a miracle, he may use you to do a supernatural healing that will cause them to be persuaded that you are serving the true and living God, and they'll fall on their knees and proclaim Jesus is Lord and get saved. That kind of miraculous healing, yes, I believe that happens a lot. A lot. But the do it whenever you feel like it type, I'm not persuaded that happens. So these sorts of debates, and I used to debate other pastors about this all the time, and it boils down to definitions. Once you define what we're talking about, everyone's universally agreed. For example, I was at a pastor's meeting in Huntington Beach probably 15, 20 years ago, and they wanted me to speak for all the churches in Huntington at a big rally. I said, well, I don't think you really want me to, because I have some differences of theological opinions than you guys do, and it won't go so well. And they said, no, we can work them out. I said, oh, and they said, so give me an example of what you have. I said, well, if we're in a group and someone stands up and says, thus saith the Lord, and someone's still going off and stuff like that, I don't really think that God said that. I need more evidence than that. I need some sort of supernatural accommodation with that, some sort of affirmation from God that he's actually doing that. A miracle that would confirm it, like you find in the Bible repeatedly. Moses says something, then he does a miracle. Every prophet says something, does a miracle. This is the pattern. You see it all over and over. In fact, the New Testament even says these are the marks or the signs of an apostle, that you are able to do these miraculous things. In other words, they authenticate the message and messenger of God. So I have a hard time believing that. And they start laughing at me. And they said this, we don't believe it either. Well, we have to put up with those old ladies. And I thought, okay, this is the very reason I don't want to be a part of this group. You're having the same issues that I'm having, but you put up with it. Instead of saying, well, I don't think that's a good idea because it seems insincere to me. And so they asked me to write a doctrinal statement for all of them, and eventually they signed off, and I actually did this speech because we were able to come to an agreement. But I thought, this won't be profitable, and there's some other things that took place that I felt they're probably better if we do our ministries, serving God, loving each other, encouraging one another, but not trying to make everybody the same. Because God uses different gifts and different voices to reach different people. Can God do that? Yes, he can. He's supernatural. He's sovereign. He can do that. Absolutely, he can do that. But he seems to work through the categories that he's established in Scripture. So I don't say he can't. I just say it's unlikely. And apparently, even the guys that pastor churches that do it every week think it's unlikely, but they put up with it. That's the best I can say. Is that too much information? That's just the inside story. All right. Does the gift of healing exist? Yes, it does, if you want to define it as the ability of God to heal miraculously in response to you asking him to do it. All right, next one. Where is it? Are vaccine mandates, medical tattoos, and other questionable texts the mark of the beast? The answer to that question is, please read Revelation chapter 13, where the mark of the beast is mentioned, and ask yourself, does this add up? And you'll come to the conclusion, no, it doesn't add up. But these are precursors. These are conditionings. These are preparing the world to receive the mark, but it's not the mark yet. Read the passage. You'll see very clearly it's not the same thing. Does that make sense? But it's definitely preparing you. It's definitely preparing you. And from some of the new stuff that's coming out that I just came across this last week is that they found out that a couple of the vaccines that are being used in Europe actually do have, what would I call it, technology in them, chips, computer chips in them. Isn't that right, Linda, that we heard this week? Yeah, they have actually computer chips in the vaccine that they had not disclosed before. And you notice that they don't want to have to disclose what's in them for another, 75 years. Why would you need that long? There's something in there you're not supposed to know about. We still haven't got the stuff we were supposed to find out about the Kennedy assassination in 1963. That was supposed to come out during Bush's deal, and he said, I don't want to touch that, and he handed it to Obama, and Obama's like, I don't want to touch that, he handed it to Trump. Trump said, I don't want to touch that, and I don't think Biden knows where it is. But I don't trust the government to even keep their word on that stuff. There's some sketchy stuff going around. Thank God we're saved by Jesus and not the clowns in D.C. Anyways, okay, next one. Can you summarize the fourth turning you spoke? Oh, man, the fourth turning. Yes. A generation lasts between 20 and 25 years. Its life cycle. And generation to generation has to hand over the power of leadership to future generations. In other words, you can't just die and then everyone starts over again. And the fourth generation is the critical one, because if you're in the first generation, you're 0 to 25. Your second generation, you're 26 to 50. Your third generation, you're 56 to 75. And then the final generation is 76 to 100, right? That's the fourth. So each one of these things turn over. But they turn over in a kind of a sequence that's important. And they found these sequences throughout human history. Wherever you go, you can find these things functioning and operating. And so, it so happens that a fourth turning happened in America in 1776. And what was the outcome? A decade of war. Revolutionary War was 8 years, and the Constitution took another couple of years to write, and it was a 10-year program. That's what turning takes about 10 years. And this was a fourth turning, incidentally, in the world calendar. And it started a revolution. There was a new concept of human government that had never existed before in the history of humanity. Never. This was a whole new experiment, had never been done before. The American Revolution. It's different than the French, it's different than the English, and it's certainly different from the German. Okay? That started in 76. About 84 or so, 85 we'll say, was kind of complete. And if you go a generation forward, what does that take you to? Go 50 years forward. Next, you're going to have another turning that's taking place, right? Or 80 years forward, excuse me. You go about 80 years forward. Well, you're 1860. What happened there? That's the second turning. You had the Civil War. What happened? In the Revolution, we said all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. But we didn't live that. So when the turning came, we said, we're not going to live like that. We're going to blow up the country, kill everybody, or we're going to solve this problem. So we lost over 350,000 people in that war. And what was the purpose of the war? To live up to the ideals of the original turning, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Chiefly among those, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So we're not going to imprison black people to work for us. We're willing to kill you and blow up the nation to stop it. And they said, oh, no, you won't. And so there went the war. Then you go another turning forward, and what do you have? Oh, my goodness. You go 80 years forward, and you are in World War II. And you have a war that's how big? The size of the world. It's a world war. And that's 1940. And it's a struggle for humanity. Is the founding of the Constitution in America going to be reestablished on the world stage? Or will Marxism be established on world stage? Because remember, Nazism and communism is just Marxism. It's all Marxism taking a different form, but it's the same value and worldview and structure. Atheistic, anti-God, and evil at the core. Or will the Judeo-Christian value system established by the Americans actually move forward? So we have a world war actually fighting over those things. And you go 80 years forward, and where do you come up? Oh, 2020. And we have another turning. This is the fourth turning in this nation. And we're fighting for the heart and soul of our country. Once again, will we believe that all men are created equal, established by their Creator, with certain inalienable rights, chiefly among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Our moral standard and code is based upon the Judeo-Christian scriptures, and we are fundamentally a Christian country that has tolerance for other religions, but absolutely believes in the free exercise of religion for all people at all times. We do not believe in a bureaucratic state where you're bossed around by the government instead of having free moral agency to do as you please as long as you don't harm other people, because they're also entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness is taken from John Locke. John Locke actually said life, liberty, and pursuit of possessions or property, because the way he figured it out is property is an extension of you. It's an extension of you. You created this new thing. You created the iPhone. That's your invention. That's your property. That's your intellectual property. No one has a right to steal that from you if you invented that, because it's an extension of you. And if you could own anything, you would own yourself. You have a right by God to own yourself in submission to Him. This is the reasoning of John Locke, which Jefferson picked up. And if you own yourself, you have a right to yourself, then you have a right to whatever yourself creates, as long as it isn't stolen from someone else. But that wouldn't be creating, that would be stealing. So anything that you uniquely create, and whatever property you come up with, and it's mostly intellectual property that works itself out in particular things, you have a right to as well. It's a God-given right. It's a natural right given to you by God as a human being created in His image. That's the foundation. Remember, Locke was a Christian. And, there's strong indications that Jefferson himself believed himself to be a Christian, even though he's always classified as a deist. But in private letters to his own cousin, he makes the statement that he views himself as a Christian. But there's things in the Bible he doesn't always agree with. My point is, he has a Christian worldview, not an atheistic worldview. And he understands them to be a Christian value system. So even if he weren't a Christian as we understand it, it's certainly a Christian in terms of embracing the biblical values. Whether Christ is personally a Savior or not, that's between him and God. So what Jefferson said is it's too complex of a principle to say life, liberty, and property. People will think that they can just own stuff. And it's bigger and deeper than that. So I'm going to call it the pursuit of happiness. Because you would create things in order to benefit your life. Correct? I mean, we create things that end up destroying us, but that's not our intent. We were hoping to be happy as a result. It was just a bad decision. So he changed the word of Locke from that to this pursuit of happiness, meaning it's a God-given right for you to have possession of yourself, possession of your ideas and the things that uniquely you create, and that you would do those in the pursuit of good or the noble or what makes a person happy, because that's the foundation of happiness or joy, is doing the right thing. And so when you come to the fourth turning, that's the very struggle we're in the midst of today. Does the government tell you have to wear this certain clothing called a mask? Can it say you can't leave your house? Does it have a right to say that? Do we have these constitutional freedoms that have been entrusted to us by God? Remember, from our Creator, it says in the original document. That's where it came from, the Creator, not government. You see, the uniqueness about the American Constitution, and it is the only Constitution in Western society that says, and there's none in the Eastern, so the rest is all you have to deal with. It's the only Constitution that says your rights come from God, not from the government. That's the struggle they're having in Western Europe. I just heard an interview of a guy in Europe right now they're fighting over whether to imprison these people. They won't call it prison. They will lock down these people against their will if they don't get vaccinated. And the guy was saying the reason it's not taking in America, but it's working here, is because we have a constitution that says our rights come from the government, therefore they can be taken away at any time. And the Americans believe that they came from God, and they're willing to die for that. And they're the hope of the Western world. Please keep fighting. And that's what we need to do as Christians. That's rooted in our beliefs as Christians. We're not just fighting for Orange County or California, even though if you win that one, you're in a big one, because, man, they're totalitarian in this city. And then not the city, the state. And not just America. We're fighting for all of Western civilization. They know if we cave, they're hopeless. If you're in Australia, you can be and are imprisoned now. They're hotels, but there's still prison. And you don't eat what you want, you eat what they feed you. And you try to resist them. You've seen the TikTok videos. They beat the hell out of you. And they like it. at least in the videos that they show. That's because why? Because the government gave you the right, they're taking it back. I'm going to ask a controversial question since it's a good time to do it. I have like 2 or 3 questions I'd like to ask. When can we stop wearing masks? I mean, how do we know? Is someone going to write a law and say, today is the day I declare mask free? Who's going to write that law? Oh, Emperor Fauci? Okay, so that's my second question. Who can actually fire Fauci? Who can actually say, you're fired, collect your last check, pack your bag, security, take him out? Who can do that? Nobody. Nobody. He's like a communist tyrant bureaucrat. No one can fire him. Technically, the president can. But do you think that Trump could have fired him? No, he couldn't. He would have been basically destroyed. Not that he wasn't already, but you can't touch Fauci. That's why he gets away with it. You know what he's involved in? He's doing experiments on orphans in New York because they didn't have parents. And the experiment went really bad and kids were destroyed. And then because he knew American law was seeing what he was doing is unethical, he created a new experiment that wouldn't pass American muster, so he took it to the black Africans and killed all kinds of them with his damn experiments. I'm not saying it. The president's nephew's saying it. Kennedy has written a book on Fauci. You need to read that book. He follows the atrocities of this evil, wicked, Stalinist man called Fauci. This is going to go over really good on the video. Read the book. John Kennedy's nephew wrote it. And because of that, they try to shut him down, but his family is too powerful and too ingrained in the Democrat Party to stop him. Fauci. Isn't that the name of his book? By Kennedy. The Real Dr. Kennedy by Robert Kennedy. Yeah, unbelievably good book. And if you want more fun stuff, you can read the guy that worked with Fauci in the Trump administration, Navarro. Exact quote in his book. When I talked to Mr. Fauci and looked across the table for the first time in my life, maybe the second time, I was looking into the eyes of pure evil. Yeah, that's this guy. He lies habitually. And then he says, I lied for your benefit. He sounds like I'm reading Animal Farm. And he's the pig that constantly is changing the rules and manipulating everything all the time. That's the guy. Read Animal Farm. If you want to know what's happening in America today, go ahead and read it. It's a fun read. You're going, this is all happening right now. Why? Because he was there during the Marxist overthrow of the Russians, and he was writing his stuff down. He was putting it in novel form so that you could see how it works without being, tracked down by the KGB and the other guys that are involved. He's not a dummy. So, it says I'm out of time. I may be going to prison. The worship team has one more song. So my point is, the questions are, who can fire him? Nobody. He's 80-some years old. He should have been, required to retire a long time ago. He doesn't have the authority. He lies about the data. He lies about the stuff all the time. He was involved in gain of function. He changes the definition on the website so he's no longer guilty. He changed the definition. I mean, this is crazy stuff. This is crazy stuff. So my point is, we're fighting for the soul of our society. We have to take away the power from unelected bureaucrats. See, if you don't like the president, you can vote him out the next cycle. You can't vote out Fauci. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's my point. You have unaccountable bureaucrats making decisions that destroy people's lives. He is the primary example of thousands of young children's lives over time, pets being tortured with his dumbass experiments that he was doing. And then how many lives were lost because he wanted to push a vaccine, because his career has been a constant failure. He killed thousands, they know, for a fact, of people with HIV/AIDS because he was demanding a vaccine instead of therapeutics. And Magic Johnson went and got therapeutics and showed that you could take this thing on with therapeutics instead of a vaccine. They've never come up with a vaccine, which was his job to come up with one, but people are being saved by the therapeutics. But in order to get a special pass so that the vaccine could be utilized on a special emergency order, you have to demonstrate that there are no usable therapeutics. So you have to lie about the effectiveness of the existing ones so that you can push your very profitable vaccines that don't work. And the people who get that now and get the Omicron version are more devastated by it than the people who don't get it. Most of the people who get the Omicron version who haven't had the vaccine don't know that they have a problem. They just have the sniffles. But if you had the vaccine, it hits you pretty hard. The death rate in England for those in the over 60 class is 2-to-1. Vaccine versus non-vaccine. The vaccines are dying at twice the rate the non-vaccine are from this deal. And we haven't even scratched the surface because there's an evil man in power who's unquestionable. That's the problem. Well, let's have a worship song and call it quits. Enough of pontificating. Let's close in prayer. Come on up, gang. Father in heaven, I hope that what I said was true and accurate. To the best of my knowledge it is. But Lord, if what I said was not accurate, I pray that we'd just forget it and move on. We love you. Help us to stand on our Christian convictions. Help us to live by the principles of your word. Help us to integrate those into our everyday living. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks again for joining us. For all the information on events and to stay up to date on everything happening here at Beach Cities, drop by our website, beachcities.org, or download the app. If you have a prayer need or if you want to contact us, email us at connect@beachcities.org. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click subscribe, and we will see you next week.